Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse joins me now. Senator, thank you very much for being here. What was it about this case that drew your attention so strongly and got you so involved in reopening it?
Well, this is what government exists to do, is to protect the powerless and the voiceless. So many things in Washington, D.C. that government does, it has no business doing, but this is what government is for. It's to defend weak victims like all these girls. Now, many of them, I guess, are 30-something women, but these little girls were raped by this guy and trafficked by this guy. And the Miami Herald reporting from late November and early December is really incredible. And those journalists did some really extraordinary work and service to their neighbor. And I chair the Judiciary Committee's Oversight Subcommittee. And so I reached out to the Department of Justice repeatedly in December and January saying they have to reopen this investigation.
So with regard to Mr. Acosta, who's the Labor Secretary now, you heard his explanation at that hearing. He says that the evidence, merited the deal that they struck, that he has to register as a sex offender for the rest of his life, that he did serve time, and he believes that there was nothing wrong with the agreement. What do you say to that?
Well, let's draw a few distinctions. So first of all, just as an objective matter, this guy victimized dozens, probably scores of little girls, and the sentence he got was pathetic. And every mom and dad in America, frankly, not just moms and dads, but anybody with a heart should be heartbroken by what happened here to those girls, to those victims, but also with the absurdity of a sentence that short. Now there are two investigations. So I started demanding this in December. Fortunately, the Attorney General Barr, during his confirmation hearings in January, pledged that DOJ would reprioritize this issue. And in February, they started an investigation. But we should distinguish between two of them. The criminal matter pursuing Jeffrey Epstein right now is a Southern District of New York investigation. And as disgusting and sick as this story is, this is good news today that SDNY has opened this investigation. Lots of good prosecutors there and in the FBI have been looking into this case. So that's a great investigation. The other thing that's happening is the Office of Professional Responsibility inside the Department of Justice has been looking at the question of how could he have gotten this ridiculously light slap on the wrist sweetheart deal. So what that he's a billionaire? So what that he's rich and powerful and has the best lawyers money can buy? He victimized a whole bunch of people, and law should be on the side of those little girls.
I mean, one of the shocking things. I'm sorry. One of the shocking things about the deal that was struck, just to put in as an aside here, is that it also basically absolved anybody who had any connection with him in any of these situations. Any of the people who may have also been there. Is that right?
Well, it looks like the non-prosecution agreement, and I want to say that we're getting near some really technical legal matters, and so I'm glad we have the Southern District of New York pursuing this prosecution investigation. But the non-prosecution agreement looks like it protected people who were raping those little girls in Palm Beach, but it looks like it didn't extend to Manhattan, and so that's what the Southern District of New York has been able to do in reopening this case. I don't want to comment about the particular people inside the chain of command in the Department of Justice 10 years ago, because there's an ongoing investigation now that the Office of Professional Responsibility is conducting, and they're going to be reporting back to us in the Judiciary Committee, and then we'll have a lot more to say.
This tweet came from Christine Pelosi, who is the daughter of Nancy Pelosi. She said, "This Epstein case is horrific, and the young women deserve justice. It is quite likely that some of our faves are implicated, but we must follow the facts and let the chips fall where they may, whether on Republicans or Democrats." The dangerous thing here is that, we have people cross paths with him, and we have to be very careful because these are extremely awful suggestions here. So President Bill Clinton just put this statement out, very forceful statement moments ago, saying that he had absolutely knows nothing about the terrible crimes that Jeffrey Epstein pleaded guilty to in Florida some years ago, or those with which he has recently been charged in New York. He went on to say he's not spoken to Epstein in well over a decade and has never been to Little St. James Island, Epstein's ranch in New Mexico, or his residence in Florida, which is where a lot of this was supposed to play out. There's a story in the New York Post today, and I think we have pictures of the two young women as they arrived at court. Courtney Wild was 14 years old, she said, and I was in braces. She said that he convinced her to bring him 70 to 80 girls who were 14 to 15 years old over the course of those years. She's the person on the right. On the left is Michelle Lasada, who said that she was, told to give massages that became increasingly sexual in nature. How is this different, I guess the question is, from, I think of these young women in these tragic stories who are basically kidnapped and they're, held against their will in these cases. And everyone sort of understands that. It's very clean cut. And even when questions are raised, why didn't you just run away? Why didn't you give up? There's all kinds of psychological things that become in play here that prevent them from doing that. Do you see a parallel here?
Well, first of all, we should just admit that human trafficking is a scourge of our time. We celebrate the 4th of July last week, and America that moved forward and included everybody without regard to race in the great American story. And so the end of slavery is something that we celebrate in America, rightly. But I don't think a lot of Americans understand there are actually more slaves on the globe today than at any point in human history. And so human trafficking is a scourge, and we need to be pursuing this. Again, government does a whole bunch of crap it shouldn't have any business involved in, trying to regulate the size of your soft drinks. Government ought to be doing a lot more of this, going after bastards like this guy. And this isn't a time for people to say, oh, is a Republican or a Democrat going to be implicated? Every American should stand on the side of those little girls.
Absolutely. We're going to follow this case as it moves forward. Senator Sasse, thank you very much for being here tonight. Great to see you, sir.
Thanks, Martha.